Hello! Welcome to Skeindeer Knits. My name is Ellie and I am a Norwegian living and knitting in London. You can find me as Skeindeer also on Ravelry and Instagram. Welcome back and welcome to new viewers. Just to give you a heads up, this is one of those old school podcasts. I am very much into traditional colourwork knitting, so just a heads up there. There is a Ravelry group for this podcast called Skeindeer Knits, and right now we are hosting a knit along there. So together we are making these mittens. They are Norwegian colourwork mittens that I have designed. I initially designed them for hosting colourwork classes here in London, and I'm probably gonna host them again at the end of March. That is still yet to be confirmed, but eventually I decided just to write up the pattern because it's very easy to understand beginner's pattern, which is not usually the case for Norwegian mitten patterns. They're hardly ever translated, and if they are, they give very limited information, assuming that you know what you're doing already or you have someone near you who already know how to make these mittens. So hopefully if you ever wanted to make these mittens, they will be something you would be interested to have a go at. And the KAL does not have a finishing date yet, but I want to warn you, I guess, that I'm looking to finish it somewhere mid-March. If you have any opinions for or against that, I'd be happy to take that into account. I don't have any strong feelings about this. I just feel like somewhere around that time would be a good time to close this up and start thinking about, you know, prices and that kind of thing. And maybe I could look for prices at Edinburgh Yarn Festival, because that's somewhere I'm going, which I feel like I'm mentioning in every episode now, but that's because I'm thinking about it just about every day. Oh, I'm so excited. And yeah, I will try to be in the podcaster lounge when I'm not walking about in the marketplace and getting rid of all my money. So yes, for the time being, the KAL is still open and the pattern is as ever available on Ravelry. And speaking of which, you guys, we reached, I think, somewhere above 100 downloads now. I think maybe just at 100. That was the last time I checked the other day, and wow, that's crazy. Thank you. I never thought I'd sell half that number of patterns, and it's just so encouraging because right now I'm just feeling like knit garment design is more my path than maybe my current academic one. Although I have been very certain about wanting to take an academic path for ages, and it's just like been the past year where I'm feeling a bit deflated. So maybe I'll just do like half and half, but it's still very, very nice to see that so many people are just appreciating this pattern and feeling like that's the pattern for them. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much. And as I mentioned in the last episode, we reached 1,000 subscribers, and we're like 1,100 something. I don't even know. It's like as soon as you hit that 1,000 subscribers threshold, it just goes up, and there's no, I don't have an idea anymore. I'm not able to keep track, which is probably healthy. So I hosted a giveaway for that, and I actually forgot to mention when I was gonna finish it, but hopefully that was like kind of intuitive, that was just gonna last for a week. So I have drawn a winner, and the winner is Randi Kristin Ringstad. So Randi, if you could get back to me with your address, I will be happy to send you this lip goodie bag with, I want to repeat what I'm giving away in case you didn't see it last time. Of course you did, Randi, but everybody else might want to see. So it's a Noro pattern booklet and a good chunk of Koigu Mori and what they're called, Terra by the Faber Company. So that's coming your way, Randi, if you just send me your address, and you can just send me that on Ravelry or YouTube messages. Most people send them on Ravelry, but you can send me on Instagram messages. I will likely see it either way. So for the next episode, I don't really have particularly many plans, so I was thinking maybe it's time to do the first Q&A. I've never done a Q&A episode. I mean, even if I do, it's not going to be like full-on Q&A, but I thought I could do a little bit of Q&A, questions and answers. So if you have any questions that you want me to answer, just pop them in the Ravelry forum. You can put them in the comments here as well if you're not on Ravelry. But yeah, there's already a thread for it in the Ravelry group, so just do questions and answers. It could be questions about anything really, like obviously within reason, but you know, I'm happy to take personal questions as well to some extent. But I'm assuming you probably have questions about knitting mostly. Anyway, whatever your questions are, I can't really anticipate them, just ask them and I'll try to answer them as best as I can in the next episode. So what I've been thinking about lately, and this has also been going on in the Ravelry group, is should we have a Marius KAL? So those of you who don't know what the Marius pattern is, it's the same pattern that my cushion has, except it's a sweater pattern. And I've been thinking about the rules for this and when to host it. It seems like summer or autumn is the best time. I'm thinking probably it's gonna be autumn. And so I started this topic in the Ravelry group, just listing the rules that I think will be good. So it would generally for a sweater, adult size, you know, potentially teenage, because there's not really that much of a difference. Has to be a original Marius pattern by Sonnes Design, although I'm making an exception for like old vintage pattern that were published before the copyright disagreements were settled. But I'm not allowing any of the sort of alterations like Cheese Attack or Ebba, even though I think they're lovely. That's kind of what I've landed on, and I'm not going to allow for drops patterns because they're not genuine Marius patterns. So it's still open to debate, and the debate is going on in the Ravelry group, and so far people just agree with what I've listed. So if you're interested, like, start thinking about this now. Like, you might want to look for sweater quantity yarns at Edinburgh, for instance, if you're going there. I already have my yarn. My plan is to maybe make a very light wool mesa lace Marius, but I've also wanted to make a Marius out of fenouil yarn or lamb's wool, so maybe I'll make two. So yeah, the only reason I'm mentioning this now is just like, are you interested? If so, let me know, and what thoughts and ideas do you have? I'm just venting ideas at this point, really. So I've been making a bit of a habit to recommend podcasts, etc. lately. I don't have a particular podcast to recommend today. I kind of want to spread them out a little, you know, I don't want to run out, and there's only so many podcasts I can watch and listen to. But one I really want to mention today, it's not a podcast, it is a podcast episode. So the podcast is unfortunately no more. They stopped podcasting in December, and that is Stuff Mom Never Told You, which is a podcast about, it's hard to really narrow it down, it's about gender, it's about women's things, it's just about like being a woman issues. It can get political, but it can also be very, I guess, I don't know what, down to earth, like just day-to-day life kind of thing, musings about being a woman, things that are like women's topics. It was run by two lovely ladies. They are now off to doing other things, but there's like a wealth of well-researched episodes up there. It's an audio podcast, you can find it on iTunes or whatever, and they did one episode on knitting, and as ever, well-researched, super awesome. It's just called Knitting. I'm linking to it in the show notes, and I really think you should listen to it. They really do cover how knitting has been both a women's and a men's tradition. I mean, knitting started among Arab men, probably making fishing nets, so you can see how it's evolved since then, you know, since the first stuff that people have discovered in Egypt to what we have today, and this idea that we have now that it's a women's craft, whereas like actually it's been a men's craft and a women's craft, and it's like there's no point in gendering it really. And I think that's maybe a relief to hear today, because you know, a lot of men, when they knit, they go through two stages really. There's the first stage where you kind of have to prove yourself, you know, you enter the yarn store or the festival or whatever you're doing, and you're doing maybe a podcast, and you really have to show, yeah, I'm a man and I can knit. Second thing is like when you proved yourself, women are like, oh, he can knit, he's the most brilliant knitter ever, and it's like just as good as any other woman. So it's like this really weird thing. That's nothing to do with the podcast, that's just my thoughts. Podcast episode is, however, not just about the gender balance, but also about kind of the thing that I like to focus on, and they really just hit the nail there, where it's like this saying that's really trendy nowadays, where you go, oh no, I don't knit like grandma did, you know, and it's like, hang on, grandma developed this, like she's the one who's been carrying on this tradition so that you can enjoy it today. Like, I have so many thoughts about this, and I'm probably going to talk about it again and again and again in the future, but for now, just listen to that episode. It's very nice. They have a very nice kind of non-biased take on most things. They just kind of cover the research, and well, they give their opinions, but I don't feel like, there's like no particular population that I would say, or maybe it's not for you. I think it's generally for everybody, and it's really interesting, and you are still like free to develop kind of your own point of view and opinions. So it was just such a treat. I remember listening to this episode more than a year ago now, and I just remembered it the other day, and I was like, yeah, let's listen to this again. And both me and my boyfriend were listening to this while sitting on the floor laying a map of London puzzle, in case you wanted to know. And both of us like found it really interesting and really funny, so have a listen. The other recommendation I have for today is Code of Mittens, and this is an Instagram account, which is amazing. So amazing. It's just full of amazing knitted mittens. It's like everything I aspire to on that account, just on that whole feed, just all the pictures, all the mittens. Just go have a look. That's all. Code of Mittens on Instagram. Now let's get to what I'm actually knitting. I should really open with that sooner so that people who are just coming to this podcast can actually see, oh, this is the kind of knitting we're talking about here. I see. Well, I have a half-finished object, so what's better than now to show you what this podcast covers. I finished one sock. So I have actually started the second one, so we got a little toe here, a little chin warmer. So yeah, if you don't already know, this is like upcoming design of mine. I already made a pair of these for a friend of mine for Christmas, and well, I decided this is actually a pretty decent pattern, so if I knit up another color combination, then you know, you can see what you can do with it. And I already have test knitters on it, so as soon as we're all done, I'm gonna touch up on the pattern a little bit, and it should be out to you probably sometime in March. So this is what I have so far. It's all been knitted in Drops Fable, like possibly the most affordable sock yarn that you can find, so it should be a pattern for every budget, which makes me very happy because I have been a budget knitter for a very long time. It's changed recently, but so yeah, in terms of difficulty, I mean, I'm gonna get more into this when the whole thing is up. I think it's good to knit this if you already have sock knitting experience from beforehand. Don't let this be your first sock, I don't think. I mean, if you're very experienced with color work, this could be your first sock, but don't be brand new to both sock knitting and color work. I don't recommend that. I mean, you do whatever you want, of course, and some people are just brilliant at everything they try for the first time, so who am I to say that? But I'm thinking if you're either reasonably skilled at either color work or sock knitting, this is not going to be a problem for you. It looks intricate, but actually it only carries 2 strands of yarn per round, and some rounds don't carry any. They carry 1 strand. So here we are, and the major departure from the initial pair of socks that I made is the German short rose heel as opposed to the fish lips kiss heel because of copyright reasons. And I am, as ever, knitting on the Snow Melt shawl. It's a Mystery KAL by Helen Stewart of Curious Handmade. And as I said before, her patterns are generally very supportive. I don't know how else to say it. It's like they always hold your hand through it, and this is something I'm usually feeling quite strongly against. But in her patterns, it's not this sort of really annoying spoon feeding where you're not allowed to make your own decisions. It's just like easy to follow, and I feel like that's different, and I feel like that's what makes her pattern so great, because people like me who are not super confident with shawl knitting and may have had a few bad experiences with it, then they can enjoy this and feel very confident. So here we are. Sorry I didn't give you a warning, but like the queue's been up for a week when this episode's going up, and this is only Q1, 2, 3, so Q4 should be up the same day that this episode goes up, so there's none of that here. And this is what I have so far. So it's Latvian and me yarn, and yeah, and it's a half circle. It's a genuine half circle shawl. I can't tell you how excited that makes me. So this is a half pie shawl technically, though technically if you want to be mathematical, it's a pie shawl. And yeah, I think it's great. So let's look at the lace up close. This is the lace from Q1, that's the light one, and the lace from lace from Q2 is the light one. The lace from Q3 is the darker one here. So there we are, looking pretty neat, and it's gonna be huge because I know this yarn grows incredibly. We saw that previously, and I am prepared for that. I went down a needle size. I had to rip out the first Q. So if it becomes any bigger than this, well, fine. I like a big shawl, and I like it when it's a manageable geometrical shape. if it's got too many long ends, as you get often with crescent shaped shawl and asymmetrical shawls, then I have trouble wearing them. But when it comes to this shape, oh, it makes me so happy. It really does. I love a good half circle or triangle shawl. Like, nice symmetrical shawl is all I want, and this is giving me that. The colours are not entirely me, but that's what it makes me really interested in this, because it's not something I would have chosen for myself. Had I seen the picture of how the shawl looks like so far, I might have been a bit hesitant, but now I'm like, yeah, this shawl's gonna be mine. Oh, it's so cool. So that's how far I've gotten with that so far. I did finish Q3, Q1, 2, 3, they're all done, so I'm eagerly awaiting Q4, which should be up tomorrow when this episode goes up. I have knitted more on the stuff that I can't tell you about, and I'm really sorry that I can't tell you about it, but this is just one of those things I want to be a surprise, so rest assured I'm working on it. Another thing that I decided to start was a pair of colorwork mittens that is not one of my current projects, my work in progress, because there is a colorwork mitten KAL, and until the end of the month I have a discount code for it, for my mittens, so you might want to have a look at that. And there are lots of discount codes for many other mittens as well, so check out this hashtag and I'll link to the group below. I can't remember, it's like NHK Mittens 2017 by the NH Knits podcast, which is a really nice, good podcast that I discovered recently because of this KAL. And well, any podcast that hosts a KAL for colorwork mittens is right up my alley, so of course I'm going to do a mittens for it. But the mittens I've started working on for it is very unlikely to be finished in time, and the deadline is the end of March. You'd think I would finish, but let's have a look at this. So some of you might remember I bought 2 Latvian mitten kits at the Knitting and Stitching show in London this autumn, and I've started to make one. I thought, this looks like the easiest one. No idea why I thought that, because if you look up close, it carries 3 strands of yarn in the round. It's like, I love color work, I love strand knitting, but carrying 3 strands is like the end of my will to live. Oh, so I've started knitting this, and this little cuff has taken so many hours, I dare not even count them. I was halfway through it after, oh god, since I woke up until maybe 4 in the afternoon. Like, I wasn't knitting continuously, but so now I have the whole cuff. There we are. So you can see I finally knitted this, and I know what you're thinking, Ellie, isn't this very small? How is this gonna go over your hand? Well, it goes just over my hand actually. You have to force it on, but that's actually something I decided on purpose, because I want the mitten to sit. I know Latvian mittens, they have a bit of a, almost like an A-line finish, and that's just not going to sit on my hand, so I'd rather have a tight cuff. And now I'm going up a substantial number of needle sizes. So yeah, it was just generally a bit of a pain to just carry all the 3 strands over, because, well, I don't have problems with knitting with 3 strands. I can just hold them all over my index finger, that's fine. But sometimes the floats for one of the colours can get really long, and I'd rather weave that in. And when I do that, the yarns tangle, and getting 3 yarns tangling is a huge pain. 2 yarns tangling is no problem at all. 3, that's just, I spend half the time just sorting out the 3 strands. So if you have any good techniques of how I can hold them over my left index finger, but without tangling them when I'm weaving in when I'm attaching, securing the floats, that would probably save my life. So I'd appreciate that. But yeah, this is what I have in the kit so far. These are my 4 little yarn cakes and the cuff, and it's gonna take a while, so I'm probably not gonna make these mittens for that KAL. I'm likely to cast on another pair of colorwork mittens soon. Oh, well, that will be for the next episode. For the time being, I kind of want to talk about this pattern, because it's not a particularly helpful pattern. Now, I've been told that the stockmatician Nathan has also covered this. I've not seen this episode yet, because I kind of wanted to give you my take on this pattern, so we might just say the same thing, might not. I'm gonna check it out later, because I'd like to see other people's experience with this kit as well. So let's just start with this. It's called the mitten recipe, and that's kind of more accurate. It's more of a recipe than a pattern. And it says start with a cuff, either with fringe or notches. And I looked through the fringe paragraph. It's like a list of bullet points. I'm like, I don't get this. So let's do the notches, and I think the notches look nicer. So that's when you get this sort of knitted together yarn over edge that you just saw. So I'm reading this. Cast on the necessary amount of stitches. Yeah, okay. So I'm just looking at the chart here and counting these stitches and just doubling them because you want on the front and the back of the mitten. So I figured, yeah, I'll do that. And I also made some calculations to make sure that the needle size I choose will lead to the right gauge. That means I will get a mitten that is 10 centimeters wide across. That's the most comfortable fit for me, so that's what I'm aiming for. Knit one row according to the pattern. So this could be this pattern, or it could be that little pattern here. But this pattern is like the weirdest collection of symbols, so I have to go to the back, and the vertical stripes are basically knit stitches and the triangles are knit two together, although it says TOG slash K2 TOG. There's a hyphen, it says together, in the brackets, knit two stitches together. This could have been better explained. You could just say knit two together right away. I mean, what does TOG mean? Anyway, I know it means together, but like, that's kind of how... Anyway, let's move on. And the circle is yarn over. That's something we already know. So it could be one row of that pattern, or it could be one row of this pattern. I don't know. After those, and that pattern in here, it goes over 2 rows. It's the knit row, and then there's the yarn over knitted together row. And the bullet point after that says, work as many rows in knit stitch as you did before. Well, I've already just been told to knit 1 row from the pattern. But then there's that pattern in here that has 2. So have I now knitted 1 or 2 or 3? I don't know. So now in the next point says fold the knitted part together. So what they mean is now you make a fold that makes the bumpy edge for the knit two together and yarn over. And it's the idea that I should have just knitted 1 row before I'm doing that, because that's not going to look very nice. You should knit a couple of rows before doing that, in my opinion. And now it says knit 2 together, knit together 1 stitch on the needle with 1 stitch from the folded part of the knitting. You could just say knit into the cast-on edge, because this doesn't make any sense, but that's what they mean. You're folding it over so that your live stitches are facing the cast-on stitches and you just knit them together throughout. But then it says knit 2 stitches together in the beginning, and that's like, well, I've now cast on the necessary amount of stitches and you're now telling me to get rid of one of them. So that's, it would have been nice to have a heads up there, just saying. So all of this, I'm just looking at it and I can imagine what it's going to look like. I'm just, no, don't do that. And I keep reading and it says step 1. Okay, so is this where I should have started? Good to know. Calculate the size of mittens before you start, and there are lots of bullet points on how to do this, but I don't like it because it starts with needle size and makes you calculate everything else around that. I'd rather start with a sort of gauge and stitch count trade-off and then choose the right needle size on the basis of that. So yeah, I kind of did my own thinking there, and I think that's fine. And then it says step 2, cast on. Using any cast-on method, cast on the total amount of stitches and leave them on the needle. I mean, if I'm supposed to be capable of thinking this through, of being like capable enough knitter to knit this pattern, I know to leave them on the needle. Like, you don't need to tell me that, okay? Anyway, and it says work 1 round of knit 2, purl 2, rib. Am I supposed to do one of the 2 cuffs in a initial instruction? I'm supposed to do this because that's not going to go together, so I don't know what they want from me at this point. And it says bind the free thread together with the working thread so that there is no gap between the 1st and the 4th needle left. So I'm supposed to attach the yarn end, but then it says the loose thread will work as a marker for the 1st needle. But you just told me to. I don't follow. And it says keep the knitting clockwise. I know you're supposed to knit mittens in a round. Like, they assume so much knowledge of you, but they don't assume that you know how to knit clockwise. Oh dear. So step 3, the cuff. cuff is usually 6 to 7 centimeters long, or as many rows as there are stitches on 2 needles, or according to the design. I understand this, but it does not fit with the 2 cuffs that you're being told to choose between. So that's kind of how far I got. And kind of my thoughts about this is, actually, it is not a bad pattern. It is not a bad recipe. It does assume more knowledge of the knitter than a usual English language pattern does. So what I think is the problem with this recipe is that it's poorly translated, not in terms of just Latvian to English. The words are accurate, the grammar is fairly accurate. It's the knitting language translation that's lacking. It's reusing a particular knitting language in English, and from what I gather here, these words probably make perfect sense for a Latvian knitter. And I think when they read these words, that makes total sense. These are the words we use in our knitting. I know exactly what this means, but when you're just translating them directly into English without taking into account the words normally used in English knitting, it doesn't quite, well, translate. So I don't think it's bad. I think it could have needed more people involved who knows English patterns and who knows Latvian math patterns, so that someone who's not Latvian, who does not know how to make these mittens, could perhaps be a bit more helped. But maybe that's just not the goal of this pattern. You know, not every pattern aims to be a beginner's pattern, so that's perfectly fine. And what I've kind of taken away from this pattern so far, now granted I've only made the cuff, but I'm thinking where it's not very specific, where it's not very clear, where it's being vague or saying, you know, yeah, vague, it's not important. The bits that are unclear are not important. That's where you can kind of wing it. That's where you can just say, actually, if the number of rows are not specified, I'm gonna knit the number of rows that I want to do. If the number of stitches are not specified, then I choose them. And that's kind of, I think, more the thinking behind Latvian mittens, is that you actually have to be a confident knitter. You need to trust in your own decisions to make the mitten fit you. It's a lot about mitten fit, and actually that's something I appreciate, because sometimes when you knit a Norwegian mitten, you just end up with whatever proportion that the designer has made for you. Whereas this, you have a repeated chart, and that can be as long as you want, as wide as you want, give or take. Like, there are some limitations obviously, but so I think you as the knitter makes more decisions than perhaps what you do in a usual English language pattern, and I think that's very refreshing. So would I recommend this kit? Yeah. I don't think the recipe is great in terms of reaching an English language knitting audience, but I think this kit is lovely. I love getting just the right amount and colors of the Latvian wool you need for your mittens. I love having at least something to base my mitten construction on, because usually you just get a chart repeat and they say, go ahead, make a mitten. So I love this kit. I love them, and if I can get my hands on more, I probably will, because I think they're great. And I love Latvian yarn. I really, let's just talk about this wool. This wool. So someone asked me recently what it's like, and I was like, yeah, it's like your usual Shetland wool, but not quite. Because usually if you hold up a strand of Shetland wool, you can sort of see the plies kind of twisted around each other. You can almost see through them, between the plies I mean. Here it's a bit more dense, so this is not going to focus, but generally the plies are closer together. It's a very minimal, little, unimportant difference. And so you could easily use Latvian wool and Shetland wools and Norwegian wools interchangeably. If it's a 2-ply pure wool, I think you'll be fine, like sport weight to fingering weight. I don't think it's that important. But I do like to think about the sort of specific aspects of this yarn in relation to other yarns that are comparable. I think this is more comparable to Norwegian yarns. It's similar to Finul and those yarns, more so than maybe Shetland wools, but they're pretty much all very much alike. So I love this wool, and I love having a kit with this wool. So, well, it's led to a lot of frustration and just a bit, oh, why can't these mittens just, oh, why? It's, you just need to trust yourself. And yeah, I still love this kit. I wouldn't I'm not regretting my purchase despite being very frustrated with the recipe. So hopefully this doesn't sound too confusing in my love-hate relationship with this particular pattern. I just kind of wanted to cover my thoughts and feelings and tell you what I think. And I think it's more of a knitting specific language issue more so than a bad pattern. I just think you need to get into a Latin knitting mindset instead of taking this from your usual English language pattern perspective. Yeah, that's the main crux of this. Just take on a new perspective. Think knitting in a different way. And I'm kind of saving the best for last today because I have a finished object. My black KAL mittens, they have thumbs and everything. Look at that. And they're on the blockers, but I think it's time to take them off. Like the cardboard, the foam board that I'm using that I've just cut out to have as blockers. It's a bit moist still, but I think the mittens are good. So let's just take them off and see what we have. The thumbs are a bit moist still, but I'm not going to block them anyway, so I don't really care. Let's just... They're really stretched on these. I used these blockers for my Norwegian mittens, the Christmas mittens that I have made earlier. So they just fit everything that's supposed to fit my hand. And my complaints about these mittens is that they fit just enough. Ooh, 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 they fit just enough. Way better after blocking. I take it back. They fit perfectly now. They have, before blocking, they were rather tight around here. So I didn't have much wriggle space for my finger. I literally had to keep them together. It didn't like make me have them overlap, but just, yeah, now they fit really well. I do wish the cuff would be slightly further down. I did knit the thumb hole a bit higher up, but now I don't know if that's the issue. I don't know. I'm very picky about my mitten fit, but this is pretty close to perfect actually. So let's just have a look. So I've used black Tamar, which I talked about before. I was really surprised how the contrast is much lower once you knit these very different yarns together. So these are the yarns I've used, and here you can see just how incredibly different they are, and when you knit them together they just blend together. It's probably because the yarn is very hairy. I don't have it here in writing right now, but the yarn is a mix of different sheep fibers that are native to England and, or at least the UK, and I didn't realize that a lot of these fibers have very long hair. They are a bit more, as sheep wool goes, more comparable with alpaca yarn, and these long fibers are not ideal for color work, but they're not horrible either because it's sheep wool, so it's still reasonably sticky. So you can still see that you get a reasonably sticky holistic fabric with it, and that's the point. But stitches are still a bit drapey because the long hairs just don't have fibers that point out in every direction and kind of bind it all together. So I would perhaps not use this yarn for color work again, but I'm still very eager to finish my skeins into something. I'm thinking because this contains a bit of Wensleydale wool, it could go well with my pure Wensleydale skein that's in bright red. Speaking of bright, this is very bright. Why is the sun coming out? It's February in London. It's not supposed to. Anyway, so mittens. I have a pair of colorwork mittens again. I am not, as ever, not very exciting when it comes to colorwork mittens because I hardly ever use colors. I'm gonna try to do that in my next pair that I'm gonna knit for the NH Knitting Podcast KAL. But yeah, I cast on this just a bit too early to enter into that KAL. So this will be for the black KAL. It's for Edinburgh Yarn Festival. So basically, if you knit something in black yarn, which I already happen to have, you get a discount for the yarns at the festival. So yeah, it's a very interesting construction. This is a very old pattern. It even comes with a year on the thumb, but I changed it to this year, so it says 2017. But the pattern takes very good care in making it fit your hands. So after the thumb here, there's a decrease up to here, so that when your fingers are here, it's a bit more narrow and it fits that. And when it goes slightly before you start decreasing here, another two stitches are removed, so it just gets gradually more narrow before you do the decreased top. I think that's really neat. It gives a very nice fit. Usually you feel like mittens are very loose on top, and that's not the case with these. They have a lovely fit. You can tell that the ladies who designed these do exactly what they were doing, and they've done this for a lifetime, and it's just so, it feels so amazing to be in touch with all these old crafters that have made and produced these patterns for ages, and they know it. They just, oh yeah, it's just like that feeling, that connection between knitters of the past and their old traditions and what they used to make. I can't really put it into words. Hopefully you will understand what I mean. I just want to show you these forever. It's really hairy though, like you can see the fibers flying when I'm doing this. Hopefully that will just stop at some point. So yeah, to sum it up, I would probably not use this yarn for colour work again. It's not something I regret. It works, it's fine. It's just, I think maybe it serves better purposes on other things. Also, I want to show you the thumbs because they continue the chart. They're supposed to do that from looking at the pattern, but that didn't really seem to add up for me, so I have altered the thumb chart a bit. I just kind of improvised it and looked at the previous row to see what I needed to do, and it seemed to have worked, and I'm just really happy with these. Yeah. So I'm about to wrap up this episode, but I want to answer a question I got on Ravelry recently, which the question was basically from a lady who's going to Edinburgh Yarn Festival and want to look for yarn that she could use for colourwork mittens, a sort of classic Norwegian pair of colourwork mittens. And she said basically that she knows that I would recommend, you know, the usual Shetland yarns that you could get up there, but she says that she's too sensitive to wear these yarns next to skin, so she was hoping that I could have other yarns to recommend. And I have like 3 to 4 different answers to this question. And the first is actually, you can adapt your skin. Like, unless you have a full-on animal fiber allergy throughout, you can actually get used to scratchy wools, and it's a lot quicker than you'd think. Like, some of us talk about like, oh yeah, I was raised with pure wool, so that's why I'm not sensitive towards it. I'm talking about like just a few weeks, give or take, maybe months, I don't know. So I've always said that Icelandic let-lope yarn, I can't go there. That's my threshold for where it gets too scratchy. I just can't. I've had the opportunity of buying it several times. Just when I hold the skein, it's just, oh god, I can't. It's too scratchy, too scratchy. You can do with any Shetland yarn, any Norwegian yarn, but let-lope, too much. Except both the 2 local yarn shops that I have, they have that yarn, and both times I were there, I just squished the yarn. I was like, actually, I kind of like this. So throughout knitting with pure wools of less scratchy varieties, I've actually come to find that Icelandic wool doesn't bother me at all. Like, usually scratchy yarns are at their most scratchiest in skein form, so that's like as bad as it will get. And when I was holding those skeins, I was like, I want this. I want to knit a whole garment out of this. I think it's lovely. And so I've not even adapted to Icelandic wool. I've adapted to reasonably soft Shetland wools. I think Shetland wools are lovely soft now, by comparison to Icelandic wool, certainly. So that's one thing I want to say. Actually, try to adapt your skin. It happens quicker than you realised. I'd not realised that just in a matter of months. I'm now perfectly fine with Icelandic wool. And the other answer I have is, the yarn will adapt. That's so silly, but with wear and wash and fabric softener and hair conditioner, you can make your knitted garment, if it is a non-superwash pure wool, incredibly soft and nice smelling as well. So this happens over time, but you can also force it right away if you like plop in all your hair conditioner in there and like give it a good wash and a hand wash. You can do a hand wash program in the washing machine. Maybe not if you have a top loader, I can't comment on that, but if you have a hand wash program, you can do that. Also just wearing it, like a pure wool garment that's lasted for some generations, as they often do, will tend to be very soft. A lot softer than it was right away. So that's the other thing. My third answer is actually blue-faced Leicester. I think blue-faced Leicester is this nice little compromise between stickier yarns, rustic yarns, and merinos. I don't think it's ideal, but I think it's good enough. I think you can get very lovely colour work results with blue-faced Leicester. I have a bit limited experience with it, but I did my first mitten pair in my own design with blue-faced Leicester, a blend, but still. And it looks really lovely. It's exactly all that I'd hoped for. So try blue-faced Leicester. If you can find a fingering weight blue-faced Leicester, that will be ideal. They usually 2-ply these wools that you use for mittens, but I know Blackie yarns, they call their fingering weight yarns 4-ply. I still think they're 2-ply though, so check that out. The fourth thing is lamb's wool. Now lamb's wool is generally just chucked into the same category as all the other 2-ply pure wools, because they are. But they are softer because lamb is just softer in general, so have a go at lamb's wool as well. I think it's just softer but has all the advantages, so that's something worth checking out. And I think that's my full answer. So try to adapt your skin, try to just make the yarn softer, or try blue-faced Leicester, or try lamb's wool. Hopefully that helps you. And that's pretty much all I have for this week. I feel like I should comment on all the soft plasticified yarn behind me. I kind of freaked out after the last episode. I was sure that the one bug that I'd squashed was a moth, and then I looked through my stash, took all the yarn out of the bed, and I found one other bug that looked the same, and I still have it in a bag. I was like, oh god, it must be a moth, and I can't see anything. All my skeins look perfect, no larvae, no eggs, nothing. It's all fine, but I'm still freaking out. So I roasted every skein at over 60 degrees, which is supposed to kill off moths and larvae and eggs. Only to find later in the day when I went to a yarn shop and at night, and they told me, no, that doesn't work anymore. They become resilient. And I showed them the bug that I had it in a plastic bag. It's dead, it's fine. And I was told it wasn't a moth. So I've gone through all this effort for just a regular bug. Not a carpet beetle or anything, it's just any other bug. So, oh well, better safe than sorry. That was what I was thinking. I wasn't in a full-on panic. I just thought, well, I'd rather not regret this, and I'm gonna buy more yarn at Edinburgh, so I'm not gonna take that home to like a moth party. And now I'm feeling very confident that no moths has ever been here, and it's not going to either, because all my bag is in plastic, all my yarn is in plastic. Now, while moths can technically, if desperate enough, chew through plastic as well, it's just stuffed with lavender sachets and cedar wood balls, so I don't think they're gonna want to. And the other good news is that I've kept my giveaway price somewhere entirely. Now the good news is that I actually kept my yarn giveaway price far away from my stash initially, so even if there had been a moth infestation, at least those 4 skeins would have been safe. But it's all fine, it's all good. There's nothing happened. I'm just kind of still feeling my pulse a bit up there, so I'm just gonna keep it in plastic until I've like soothed my soul. And I'm gonna keep it there for a few weeks because that's the amount of time it takes for moth eggs to hatch. So while I don't think I have that problem, I don't want to regret and be like, oh, there's no problem, I'm gonna unleash the yarn again, and then it's all there and all over the place. So at least now I'm like containing it to a few skeins at a time. But I really do think it's all fine, and it's just such a relief. And it made me think about this one memory that I had from the previous place I lived. We had a little storage room. It was just like the size of a door, and we had some cushions and pillows in there, and I was pulling out some pillows to give to a friend sleeping over or something, and it was just like covered in larvae. And I was just like, ew, I'm getting rid of this. So I just threw it away. And in hindsight, I'm like, was that moths? Did we have moths? I didn't deal with the situation at all, and actually nothing happened. There wasn't anything left in that storage room. We kept lots of other things in there that we used and took everywhere, and nothing was damaged or anything. So remembering that kind of soothed my soul as well, because when you say like, oh, moths is so difficult to get rid of and it's just hopeless, I'm like, actually I didn't even have to try there. So I think it's all fine. I'm just kind of still a bit jumpy just because I suspected that there was something, but now feeling very confident that everything's fine, my yarn stash is fine, and it's all been taken care of in case there was anything. So like, I've done what I can, and I'm just gonna exhale and hope that you will have a nice week. I think I will have time to do another 1 or 2 episodes until Edinburgh, and I'll probably come back a bit late after that because I'm gonna stay in Scotland for a while after that. But I will see you next week, and do remember to pop a question or 2 into the Ravelry thread that we have for it, or elsewhere if you wanna just ask me anything for the upcoming Q&A special. So I will see you next week. Bye!